evening. It is Tuesday, November 29th, 2022. We got the Baubles and Ball Cards Q&A post-game show. I want this to be a thing. I so badly want this to be a thing. I don't know if it'll become a thing, but I want it to be one. That's why we had John Madden and Pat Summerall. Like, come on. I just need an excuse to have John Madden and Pat Summerall on my thumbnail. That's all I wanted, and I got what I wanted. Also, kind of a quick side bonus. This is the 185th video on this channel this year, which now matches last year's output, which was the record output. So now we will be on to new records by Friday, unless my civil war continues with documentary makers that I'm going to leave on the side tonight. So just to be clear, just to level set here, those of you who are familiar with my channel know my love affair with tag, endless love, much love and much respect. But I'm actually going to take a little bit of a backseat here from this one because for the most part, I'm actually genuinely interested. I want Baubles to kind of talk through some pieces because he was able to talk with Steve Cass from Tag, the founder of Tag. There were some interesting points brought up. I'll bring up a couple of those points, but I genuinely would like Baubles to be able to discuss them. I also want Eric to have his say and be able to have a little bit of fun with it. So I think we can have a little fun with that. I think it'll be good. And then we'll see. There were a couple of things that I had some questions on, but I want to leave it open-ended to discuss. And then if you guys in the chat want to talk about any of it, we can do that as well. So we got Sports Card Anonymous here. I don't think he knows in his retirement, if you schedule something, it's better to do it around the scheduled time. So he's a little new to this. He's a little rusty on this part. USA came through, saw the tag thing when I sat there to see highlights. Love it. So Mrs. Baubles here. So Carlos is BFF. There you go. Good evening. Thank you for joining in. So who are the two old guys and which one of y'all is the turkey? The old guy is the one in the comment here. He's aging a hell of a lot faster than the rest of us are. He's the one falling apart, breaking him. Like, didn't he stub his toe, like, getting up in the morning or something? Wasn't it like just getting out of the shower or something? Like, those brittle bones over there. I don't know what's going on.
Has anyone ever noticed his logo actually is an envy of the white
He identifies as an old man. It seems very strange that he's very concerned about this. It's like, you identify as older than the rest of us, so I don't know what the issue is. All right. It would be great to know who has that Gronk card. True. That is facts. Hello, fellas. Ovechkin has 2 ghosts, and I love it. I love it. Good times. Second a trash can, hashtag Astros. At least you acknowledge it. That's important, but that's good. Okay, so a couple of things here. Let me touch on a few. Like I said, just to level set from earlier, I'm going to drop a lot of my usual stick. I'm going to be nice about this. I've already basically said that recuse myself from doing a tag review ever. Because like I said, I already have a built-in bias against a lot of the elements of things they do. And I haven't been genuinely impressed. I do want to commend you, Baubles, on the interview. I think you were fair. I think you asked some very interesting questions. They weren't easy questions, but I don't think they were like onerously difficult or unfair. I also think it brought up some very interesting kind of additional questions that obviously in the time compressed you had, didn't really have time to explore. But I took a couple of notes and we'll touch on a couple of pieces. I gave you guys a couple that we can touch on. But first, here's my question. What were your general feelings coming out of it? So you did the interview, you got to ask certain questions, you got certain answers as you went along. I will commend Steve for actually doing it, Steve Cass, for the founder of Tag, for actually doing it. So I'll give it to you. So from that perspective, kudos to him for that. And then kudos to you for asking questions that, again, were not the easiest questions, but I don't think overly difficult. I think fair questions. What was your impression? What did you feel coming out of it?
So first, I want to agree. Thanks for Steve coming on. And to be clear, he had no idea what I was going to ask. He popped on in the waiting room 2 minutes before I went live. He had first told me to email him questions. And then later on, he changed that and said, no, let's just do it live. He also wanted to make sure that I didn't edit anything. So he wanted to be very candid and open and honest on all of that. So I do appreciate all of that with him. As for some of the questions, obviously there was things that he didn't have answers to, but then there was also some things that were said that I kind of think raised more questions. And it's good to see the claim of 35,000 cards sitting there, but on the flip side of that, it sounded like some big dreams of ATM machines and remote grading and bulk submitters around the world and everything else. And then when I brought up the numbers, it was like basically saying that I was unfair because they had went to shows and this, that, and the other. And, okay, so you even cut that in half and say only a 6-week period. That's still going to be a long time based on what they have been doing to get out 35,000 cards. And the question then remains, because one of the biggest there's two main things that I've learned from being a bulk submitter and immersing myself in grading, and that is people want good pricing,
Hmm. Yep.
which I believe they're one of the most expensive currently.
Right now
He
they are
did say they were
with the
going to
bulk
become
ones,
the
with the bulk
cheapest,
ones. Yeah.
and they want quicker turnaround because the PSA bug that bit a lot of people with the 18-month thing. So
Hmm.
now people are gun shy on, stated 6 weeks, and it turns into nearly 2 years.
Yeah.
So that's two big questions there. There was some other things, obviously that were asked that didn't get a full answer on. I was glad to see. I don't remember who it was in the chat, but somebody in the chat mentioned that they do have like a scale now.
Yeah, so they call it the rubric. I'll touch on that in a couple of minutes here. I've got it. I've got it. I'll be able to queue it up for us. My opinion, I've checked that site semi regularly, once in a while, to do my own little bit of research and digging. I keep an eye on it, but that page wasn't there. At least not as of a little while ago. I think that's a fairly recent addition, but I couldn't tell you exactly when. I will say, so kind of playing to one of the points you were making, uh, what I thought was interesting was certain aspects of the conversation I think went the way I would have expected them to, because when I've seen some of Steve's other interviews and stuff, uh, I think he fixates sometimes. This would be the way I put it. This is a critique, not like a shot. He tends to fixate on certain specific details that don't really matter that much. It's one of those things where basically you were just figuring out an average, and I think his number was about 100 cards off, and I'm like, 100 cards one way or the other, guys, makes no difference. It's just what's in the system. As long as what's in the system is accurate to what you're supposed to have, that's fine. Knock a couple of cards here and there. I think he was trying to imply that they're scaling up, which is fine. They should be scaling up, which is great. But then at the same time, in the course of the conversation, and I'll bring it up here now, he talked about having 35 to 40,000 cards in their possession, and also that they have the ability to ramp up, but they're choosing not to. And then it kind of went and snaked in different directions, but what it came back to is that they didn't want to flood the market before the market was ready. And my thought, just my initial thought was, okay, so if I'm one of the people who sent you these cards, even if I understand that this is why you're doing it, I'm wondering why I send you these cards in the first place. I may as well just wait then until you're ready. Why are you operating a vault for now and just holding these cards for an indefinite period of time until you deem it, okay, now is the time to ramp it up. Let's get these cards out the door. If I'm giving you the cards, I want them out the door. Or just let me know when I can send them in, and I'll give you my cards.
What I also found interesting with that, and I don't know if anybody caught on to it, but part of the reason that he mentioned the cards being there was when I asked the question about the FedEx
Yeah.
boxes.
Mhm.
And then after they showed the cards, he was like, "We left the FedEx boxes there um, because they were there for the video or whatever." I'm sorry. Those boxes were brand new boxes.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's fine. They were trying to promote the business, whatever. But that, come on. I mean, Brad sees thousands and thousands and thousands of cards. We know what
Mhm.
an amount of boxes looks like based on a volume amount of cards. So that's why I even called that out in my video, because I was like, all right, this doesn't make any sense. So
Mhm. And there's one point specifically that he was making that I actually disagree with, just conceptually, and I'll explain why in a second. Again, this is Carlos trying to be as fair as possible. And Eric, check me if I'm being unfair. I want you to kind of play referee on this one. I'm going to try to play this down the middle as much as I can. I still have a question when we consider that point about the 35 to 40,000 cards. At the beginning of the discussion, he pointed out that he personally, his collection had, I think, 300 or 400,000 cards. Now, obviously, in the time constraint you're going to have, you're not going to follow it up. You're holding 35 to 40,000 cards. I am not going to get tinfoil right now, but you could ask a question. Are those your cards? Because you're holding randomly 35 to 40,000 cards that someone just seems content to let you hold, that are there. You were able to show them to us, which is great. That's fine. But I'm still like, why? Like, why do these people give you these cards? No matter how much confidence they have in your technology, you are telling them that we're just going to hold these for a while until we decide that now is the time. And part of PSA's power right now is market saturation. You go to the card show, you can say, oh, they degrade a bunch of junk, and they do. But at the same time, when I go to a card show, I'm going to see a ton of PSA slabs. That would suggest to me they're pretty powerful in the marketplace. Like, am I off on this?
I don't think so. If I'm a new company, I would want to do everything in my power to get my product out and in people's hands.
That's what I'm getting at. Like,
Uh,
it's the opposite. I'm
I
saying you want
like
to physically see the items.
it was, you and I up in the Toronto show, uh, were able to sit there with a tag slab, go over it, look at
Hmm.
it. You and I have actually held one.
Hmm. Yep.
Baubles. I'm not sure if you've had the opportunity yet.
I
Uh,
have one.
so Carlos and I, so all three of us
Hmm.
have actually had these in our hands now. Well, how many people that are in the chat or watched Bubble's show haven't even had that opportunity? It that confuses me as as an outsider looking in at a business model. Get these things out there, get them in people's hands, get them at shows, get them all over eBay. He did talk about that they're on eBay now, which is great. Um, I don't understand why you'd want to hold back your product as a new company.
Hmm.
It
Yep.
but they may have much more intelligent marketing people than myself, so I don't know.
The rules of when the other companies started, their goal in life was to get the product out to as many people. They literally would shove it on people's faces, like, please, please take this. And by the way, consumers still don't know things. Like, they'll get things out of sequence. I listened to a podcast earlier today
Mhm.
where the three guys on there were having a chat about it, and they actually thought PSA was recent. And they're doing a card podcast. And
Wow.
they were like, "Oh yeah, well, Beckett was out there, and I think SGC was out there, and then PSA just came on the last couple of years. So the coming on and being like number one, that is a more recent phenomenon. That's true. PSA was in 1991.
Yeah.
SGC and Beckett came into existence after PSA, but they actually thought it was the reverse. They thought Beckett existed before PSA. Beckett the company, yes.
Yeah.
Beckett the publishing, yes. But that tells you the threshold of knowledge of people that are producing content that other people are listening to. I'm just sitting there like, no, no, no.
Yeah. That's really poor.
And
That's
that's with ubiquitous brands in the space, though. Just so to get back to the point that I'm making here, that's with ubiquitous brands in the space. PSA, like, they probably have 40 million cards encapsulated, give or take. Like, I'm guesstimating, but like, it's got to be in that neighborhood because they had like 12 to 15 million in the backlog alone, let alone the entire rest of existence that they've ever graded.
right.
So tens of millions of cards in these slabs. SGC has graded a fair number of slabs. CSG has, I think, cleared 1 million slabs. And
Hmm.
Beckett has graded a lot of slabs. So think about that. That's already a lot of market saturation. There's already a lot of cards already sitting in slabs, and you're tagged, and you're like, we're intentionally not going to put slabs out on the marketplace. We're going to wait until eBay adds us to a drop down. Okay.
I would be very interested in hearing really getting into their philosophy on that, and really have them explain to us. Okay, our belief is if we do it this way, this is what's going to happen. So we're doing this on purpose. Um,
Well,
I,
that's what Steve is implying. It's
yeah,
implying that all of this is basically they're not playing 4D chess. They're playing 5D or maybe 6D chess.
yeah,
Because remember, they've already dumped $10 million and years of development into this and a multitude of patents. And I'm like, this seems like a lot of work for something that is actually not that complicated. I understand your technology you're doing is supposed to be the most sophisticated of all time, but you're telling me that if I don't get, like, I'm not being mean about this. I'm actually being serious.
I know.
You're telling me that under the right circumstances, I couldn't get somebody to get their hand to look over those patents more carefully, and I couldn't get something that is 80% as good made in China. Are you sure that your technology is that fancy? Because the corporate espionage and stealing technology is a cottage industry. It's a whole thing with far more advanced systems than are required to grade trading cards. So that's an awful lot of work. Where if one of them figures out basically the general principle of it, they can just steal it, adjust it enough to avoid to skirt the patent, and then your technology is worthless. What did
Right.
you spend $10 million on?
Yeah.
I I mean, look at we discussed the Beckett slabs, the fake slabs. How did
Yeah.
people copy those? It's
Mhm.
because the patent on it is right on the slab and the patent is public. But I also worked in manufacturing where we build food processing and packaging machines. You would be amazed at how many companies will actually purchase an item from
To
another
reverse
company's
engineer it.
product, bring it in,
Yep.
and all you have to do to make it your product is change one little minor thing,
Yep.
and then it's your product.
Mhm.
And that's how a lot of stuff out there is made. So,
Yes.
patents are cool, but they're not the end all be all.
Right. And if you have a patent in one country, and there's a something that's stealing your idea in another country, they don't really care about your U.S. pattern. So
Yep.
I've seen that up close with a friend of the show, is a friend of mine, whose product is has been mimicked, but it's on the other side of the border, and it's too bad.
Yep. Let me read a couple of these comments here. I'll get caught up on these. So this one says, "Do you know the Elizabeth Holmes story with Tyrannos?" Yes, actually, I read a book on it, and it is an interesting comparison, because whenever you got a mysterious technology that no one really knows how it works, it's always kind of a little bit interesting. And I want to touch on a couple of points about that, but that's kind of an interesting thing. So Andy does have a tag slab. That is very true. Haven't seen one at a show, and that's my point. Like, from a market appearance standpoint, like, think about it. When you go to a card show and you see the big players, and you see slabs on the various tables, it implies to you a certain amount of credibility. Like, whether you agree that they're the best, the second best, the third best, the eighth best, at least physically seeing them on enough tables suggests to you that there's at least a little bit of acceptance for it in the marketplace. I'm saying, just perception-wise, that's going to naturally tell you that. When you see something that you've never seen before, you're a little bit dubious automatically. So choosing not to have it out there so that anybody can really see it outside of going to your specific booth, that's not going to... There's a lot of companies that can do that. Rare Grading can do that. They can show you a really fancy slab at their booth, but if nobody's using it and you never see it anywhere, you're not going to give it much. You're not going to give it much of a second thought.
And so we were at the largest show in Canada 2 weeks ago,
Yep.
and other than the tag booth itself, and
They had multiple tag booths, but yes.
yeah, so other than the tag booths and Jeremy's table, I did not see a tag slab anywhere else.
Nope.
It's the largest show in the country,
Mhm.
and except for an employee who had his own table
Mhm.
and the company's own tables, I did not see one anywhere else in the largest show in the country.
I think I saw some at Carnes, but Carn has an association with tag as well, so he may
I
as well
had,
be.
but
Yeah,
okay.
I saw a couple at his table, but he literally was wearing a tag, polo. So, kind of the fix
Yeah.
is in, so to speak.
Now
Two,
I was there all 4 days,
Mhm.
from before the show started till after the show ended, every single day.
Basically, we needed security bobbles to get him out of there and leave the country. We needed to basically forcibly remove him from the country, and he was like, the nails, he was just basically trying to hang on. It was
This
weird,
is
man.
true. So my point in saying that is, I didn't just go in for like 3 hours on a Saturday
Yeah.
and just run up and down the aisles. I spent every single second that building was open for the card show.
Mm.
I was there.
Yeah.
And I did not see any tag slabs except at tag and at Jeremy's table.
The problem is you were looking at Marcel Dion's table when you were harassing the man. So, he wasn't going to have tag slabs, man. Marcel was not going to have tag slabs. Stop staring at Marcel and leave other people alone. I quickly want to touch on Matt's comment here. I've heard from someone that scrutinized the hell out of them that their pants are really buttoned up. What's funny is that we happen to, friend of the show happens to be a patent lawyer, and he is actually of the impression that he could destroy that patent if it was his company's job to do so. He's looked at it as well, and he thinks he could destroy that patent if he really needed to. Again, he would have to have a reason to do it, but he doesn't think it's as solid as they claim from the ones he's looked at. And I can follow up with him, but that was the impression that he gave me when he was talking to me about it. From what he's saying, they're losing $500K a month during this ramp up. Yeah, they've already invested a lot of money. So the break-even point has got to be crazy. At some point, they're going to have to actually grade some slabs to actually start making some of this money back. I wonder what the grading bottleneck is. Right now, it seems to be the choice. The grading bottleneck seems to be... Because, again, I'm taking him at face value. For the sake of this conversation, I am taking everything Steve Cass said, as accurate. Under normal circumstances, I'd be a little bit more skeptical, but fine. For the sake of argument, let's just say everything he says is bang on true. Then intentionally they're holding back on 35 to 40,000 cards times even at the lowest grading fee. Even at their lowest grading fee, that's hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table, or a couple of $1 million on the table. That they're just sitting there like, we will not do this. We don't want this money. Not yet. Later. Okay? In the meantime, you're hemorrhaging money and sending 14 people to a card show and going to another card show and sending 14 people, and your pop report says you're adding a couple of hundred cards every now and then. It's not a lot.
Yeah, when I pulled it up yesterday, it said last week, I believe the number was 227 for the week.
Yeah.
Now obviously Thanksgiving was that week, so we'll you
Yeah.
know give them that. But
Yeah.
Right.
Look, I can make it 500 cards a week. That's still nothing. Like in the grand scheme of things, I can make it 1,000 a week. That's still nothing. Like it's like I can make it more generous. That's still nothing. In the grand scheme of the greater, considering the costs of the equipment, the building, the leases, like I'm just being logical here. Basically, it's like it's like a boat. They're literally sitting there like with a shovel, and it's like throw money into the sinkhole, and just let's see if we can finally fill out the sinkhole. I'm sure they've got the strategy. They believe based on Steve's statements, it's a sound strategy, but there is slow and methodical, and then there is. So your plan is to be solvent by 2087, 2095. We'll all be dead, and then you break even.
To Eric's point too, and that's kind of the reason. Like, I wanted to be fair.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I didn't bring up comps because,
Yeah,
let's be real, I'm familiar with a company like SGC wasn't a new company, but they were new to Ultramodern.
mm-hmm.
And when I started using them, they didn't have great prices for Ultramodern, but that wasn't why I used them.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't want to get into that segment. Oh well, your resale isn't great. What are you going to do about that? Because that's not the grading company, right?
Yep.
But then when he said that comment of they didn't want to do cards because they didn't want to ruin the resale value, that's like, so that brought two questions up. One, that's essentially admitting pop control. I mean, in a way, because you're controlling the population in what's out in the open space
Mm-hmm.
to hopefully have a comp. But on the reverse side of that, my first thought was, well, and I mentioned it to him, PSA does the most cards out there, and why do they have that? And it's just like, what Eric said and what you mentioned, the brand recognition, and he
Mm-hmm.
talks about PSA's brand. Well, how do you get your brand out there
if no one ever sees the slabs?
Right. Like, I didn't quite understand that concept. Now, I will say it might have gotten missed, but he did say that, and this is another thing where it was kind of some of the questions or the answers kind of tied in, or I got the answer for multiple things kind of the same way, because he said part of the other reason was they wanted to be sure that the grading was correct, because I think he mentioned that when I asked about if they ever needed to update the process or anything like that.
I think the way he phrased it, and I don't take this as a quote, I'm paraphrasing, though I believe the way he phrased it is effectively that they wanted to proceed methodically, so that if it turned out that the industry standard in some way changed, that they could adapt to that. But this is a weakness. Like, I was funny because Ziggy was in the chat for that one as well, and I kind of pointed out that AI is programmed by human beings, and the thing is, Steve literally opened the door for this in exactly what he said. He said if they're trying to be methodical to allow the marketplace to potentially, if there's any shifts or any adjustments to it, they can adjust and adapt. Now, Eric, check me if I'm being really ridiculous with this. If you're doing that, then that means you open up the opportunity to be able to tweak the algorithm to reflect what the industry standard is, to get it so that the machine will do what it needs to do to match the standard. But that means that anything that got graded in this first wave is operating under a different standard than the new ones.
And that's why.
And that's with a machine. That's with AI and consistency in the whole 9 yards. You have two standards.
And if PSA said tomorrow, we're going to start grading things differently, the entire industry would everyone's heads would explode.
Yep.
Because like you said, there's millions and millions and millions and millions of PSA slabs. I mean, there's one sitting right on my desk. There's one right here.
Now, in the past, a real quick point, I've said in the past that's actually the biggest reason why there's never been a PSA 9.5. It's not that it is physically impossible. I laid out a scenario where you could do it, but I said the only way you could do it would be to change the standard on the 10 and put the 9.5 where the 10 was. But the problem is then you have 10s that now should be 9.5s, 9.5s that previously were 10s. And the whole thing is anarchy because you've got 30 million slabs. You cannot, Pandora's box is open. You can't shut it again. It's too late. No, a newer company can do that. CSG was able to do it mid-flight because they had just gotten started.
Right.
And that was their only shot. They basically had that window. If they had waited another 6 months, no way. Right. Can't do it.
The only other thing I can think of, and I don't even know if it's a good example, is SGC, who had the 100-point scale.
Yeah.
But they always had
room.
But on the label, they gave you a 98, but they also underneath it gave you a 9.
So they did that when they started moving to it. There was a point where they just had the 100 scale. But here's the key. 100 was never the gem mint. 100 was always the pristine. So what they did, where SGC gave themselves room to adjust, in reality, SGC didn't change the scale. They just changed the numbering that corresponded to the scale, which is perfectly sound. SGC actually had room to go above gem mint from the get-go. So as a result, when they needed to switch to a 1 to 10 scale, they could still offer you a 10, and they could still offer you a gold label, and it still jive with the old setup, even though it looked different to you. It still jive with the old setup.
I don't know if it's the same thing, but when it comes to changing something midway, that's what jumps into my head first.
Yeah, but they couldn't reinvent the wheel. If they had added more slots, that's where it would have been really complicated. But at least there was a connection to the previous. You weren't just inventing stuff.
They did add one grade. They added the 9.5.
Yes.
But if you send a 96, which is the old mint, to be reholder, they evaluate the card to see if it is conducive to stay a 9 or will bump to the 9.5. So that's the only difference in the scale.
Yep. I'll read a couple of these here. So Dave, good evening. I asked if they changed the algorithm, what happens to the old grades? Yeah. The thing is, it's a legitimate question because the whole idea here is AI, right? Like, again, I'm going to be... tonight, those of you who are used to my Friday show are going to be like weirded out because it's like, why isn't Carlos like, hitting with over the top hyperbole? It's like, he doesn't really like this company and a lot of things they stand for. It's like, you're right. But I want to be fair here because I think there is an interesting discussion to be had. So that's what
I made you promise.
Well, I could just take you off screen. I don't really need to. I don't need to accommodate to that. I still control this thing. But I feel that it's a better discussion if I play it straight here. I feel it is a better discussion and more valuable if we actually point out the legitimate critiques, and then we'll leave it at that, and we'll let all of you to decide how you feel about it, and that's fine. But I'd rather just get presented to you this way. So this is a lot closer to my normal videos where it's like, no, I'm just going to tell you straight. This is what it is. This is my opinion, and agree, disagree, it's fine. But the point with this one is, AI doesn't solve the problem of subjectivity, because a human being has to program it. And if the standard changes over time, it's actually easier to mess with it. And it means a whole generation of graded cards are now under the new standard, where a bunch of them came on the old standard, and you as the consumer don't necessarily know the difference. And you could do it really quietly and no one would know. It's a couple of keystrokes. Go ahead.
Well, it has to be done and set for life. Maybe the first year you could tweak some things and then say, okay, all those that submitted with us within the first year, if you'd like, send them back to us for free. We'll run them through the machine again, at our, with no cost to you, under the new thing, because we had to tweak a few things within the first year of building this company. But you can't in 10 years say, well, the industry standards have changed, we're going to go and change some things in the computer. You can't do that. Mm-hmm. So you got to set it and forget it.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Well, the thing is, if you want the consistency that you're claiming and that you're saying is the important thing here, and I'm going to get to transparency in a minute. Again, I am playing this straight, but I have legitimate questions. I have legitimate questions that were brought up in the discussion. And again, credit to you, Bobbles, for asking the question that led to the discussion. But I like that Mrs. Bobble is choosing violence. I like this side of Mrs. Bobbles, is all I'm saying. I'm appreciating it. I'm going to read this question, but I'm really enjoying it. I appreciate it. I mean, he admitted to trimming cards and submitting to other companies, which is true. He did, in fact, do that, and said that those cards got graded, all but 12, yes. So what did he do with the graded trim cards he got back? I don't have an answer for you, but it is a valid question. So we know the tag is run by a card trimmer confirmed. No, literally confirmed. Like that's actually not a joke.
That's.
I didn't go into the details on that because it wasn't about the company and it wasn't the
I
questions
understand.
had.
Look. I can't completely avoid the obvious joke. That was handed to me on a silver platter. Give me that one. Give me that one.
As long as we acknowledge that it's a joke and not an accusation, we're fine.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, there's the very first issue I asked about when they announced it. How many cards are they going to grade before changing their algorithms? Will be done about previously graded cards. Yeah, it's a legitimate issue. It's a legitimate question that you'd have to ask, as far as that's concerned. Obviously, destroy them like a good, upstanding citizen with scruples. I like the Bob Jackson used scruples.
Back real quick to the algorithm thing, or he called it the software, is what he was referring to as what does the grading or what have you. I have another concern.
Mm-hmm.
And we all know that everybody in sports cards is upstanding citizens. There's no shenanigans that ever go on. So the likelihood of this would be very, very slim.
Unbelievably remote. Exactly.
Yeah, very, like, I'm dumb for even thinking about this.
Mm-hmm.
But we know that multiple programs could be written. One maybe a little bit more relaxed than the actual one.
Mm-hmm.
What if we get into a scenario where, and I'm just going to call him Billy Joe Bob, who is a good friend of the company, has some cards he wants graded. Does Billy Joe Bob potentially have his own program? Because how would we ever know that?
Listen, like you said, anything's possible, and when there's money to be made or whatever, or friend deals. I mean, anything. But what is stopping that from happening to PSA? I'm Nat Turner's very, very, very best friend in the entire world.
And you are.
I am, and I have multi-million-dollar cards just like him because we run in the same circles. And I send over 4, Babe Ruths and 3 Mickey Mantles, and I'm like, Nat, take care of me. It's the same thing. Where we hope that doesn't happen.
But to be fair, Eric, the point is that this was supposed to prevent that. The point is it doesn't prevent it. And the point isn't that it goes on in existing third-party graders. The point is the magic of AI was supposed to be that it added this consistency. We just debunked that. You can defeat it very easily. It's supposed to prevent the human element. Actually, you didn't. You just made it easier. Now I can do it with a button instead of actually having physically grade the card. Now the machine did it. So we got an excuse. We got an audit trail. We got a dig report. Right. We're good to go, man. It's all good.
Clear. I know stuff happens in the universe space of sports cards. That's why I brought that up. It's too easy to say, oh no, this is the program, and all we get is the scanner. There's likely things that happen out there. Let's not be foolish of ourselves.
Yep.
But this would be pretty simple to have, like the brotherly program. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So
yep. Let me read a couple of these here. I'll get caught up on a couple of the comments. By the way, great comments in the chat, everybody. Thank you for that. So Shane here says, good evening. Bubbles, Eric, I'm looking for a good hockey fight to watch. What do you like? What do you like a good hockey fight? Pick one.
My favorite one of all time is with Cam Neely, and he the name slipping my head because I'm on the spot. He got one of his arch nemesis. He takes him, drags him across the ice because he turtled, and starts slamming his head into the board. Slides him back, slams him in. Slides him back, slams him in. I think it might have been Claude Lemieux. I believe.
Oh, everybody hates Claude Lemieux. I think that's valid. That's valid.
That was my favorite one. He just beat him, and he turtled, and he went, oh yeah, and he just used the ice, the slippery ice, and just slammed his head into the boards over and over again. It was the best of all time.
Yep. So it's Andy here says, what would tag have to be transparent if you change the parameters of the machines? If not, how do we be sure it doesn't change if they want to give the higher or low of a grade? So I actually want to touch on an element of that, the transparency piece. I want to open it up to a legitimate discussion, but there's a couple of questions that I have with that. We'll touch on here in a second. Is this tag beta testing currently? Maybe that's not why they're doing so few cards. They're not supposed to be. They're supposed to be launched at this point. Obviously, it's an early launch, but presumably they're accepting submissions, so we're supposed to be in to go. Good evening, Scott. Just having a little bit of fun chatting on some tag. Even though that's a bad look, yep. You can change something as a computer and not tell anyone. Yes, 100%. Those fools in chats were calling me mean, so I'm going to be mean. Listen, I appreciated it. I enjoyed it. I cackled.
Mean.
But to be clear, I am a man of peace. But I can still enjoy it. And I did. Now they have to. That's right. What cards are the basis for the theoretical 1,000 grade? What are they based on? So, based on the patents, which I've read a couple of those patents, the idea is that they're supposed to create a template of these various cards and then use them as the basis of that 1,000-point scale. So even if it doesn't exist, what's going to happen is you're supposed to get a theoretical maximum of what this card could be. Perfect centering, perfect corners, perfect edges, perfect everything. And then you knock points off of it comparatively to that perfect version to arrive at a 1,000-point grade. Now, how the rest of that works, it's super secret spy stuff.
Something with that to bring up too, because I asked the question if each individual card has to be like learned in the machine, and he said no, they don't require like learning over time or whatever, and that confused me because on those back pages favorites, the ones with the etching and the outlines,
True,
they're all different. So how is the program identifying, like if they're using one card? I believe they mentioned somewhere on the site about a 2020 Bo Bichette, which I don't know if it was chrome or paper, but anyway, let's say they use one particular card and it has etching, and that's what they used for the baseline. Well, all of the other cards, they're going to be etched differently. So how does that take into account for the variables of each individual card? That
exactly. Yeah.
wasn't quite understanding that part, but
yeah, for sure. Let me read a couple of these here. Bob Bozel says, hopefully the CEO of Tag won't try to force his way onto your show like a foolish documentary director. I'm going to talk about this on Friday. I'm going to have so much fun. I got so much material for Friday. Don't worry. We'll get there. I promise. We'll get there. So here we go. What two programs is Joe Orlando working for Tag? Shots fired. The card story, not much Scott. Mr. Cass needs to look up the word sciencer or scienter. His lawyers should be reaching out to Bubbles to pull down the video. I can't believe he admitted to knowingly submitted cards he trimmed. Allegedly. Moving on. No offense to any Billy Joe Bob in the chat. Facts. The employee discount program. True. I didn't realize this was a thing, but I love it. You should know. We have it in writing that he wanted the video posted with no edits. Ooh, you have it in writing. I like that. I like that. Well played. You can't blame the stupid computer. That's right. If you watch the interview, this chat will make more sense. I'm absolutely saying go Bobbles and Ball cards and watch the interview. I agree. 100%.
she's shameless plug.
No, but you know what? To be clear, I loved the shameless plug. I appreciate the properly executed shameless plug, and that qualifies. If you want to see the man on the right say things and stuff, allegedly, then may I suggest Bobbles and Ball Cards website. And there's Dave's question. Dave was in the chat. There you go, Dave. So you can listen to him answer questions. And we're going to get to something in a minute that is one of my favorite parts of this live stream. But check it out, Bobbles and Ball Cards. I already hit the like button. And allegedly, I hear a birdie tells me that Eric will pay for every single like button hit on this one. Because he is that kind of a swell fella.
I will pay willingly tonight for Baubles and Ball Cards for the interview. Not for this ridiculous nonsense.
Oh, you've totally been paying for that. Like, there's some serious likes on this one. I don't know.
I will not participate in this ridiculous.
I'm trying to build. Listen, Eric. I'm trying to build the live stream post game show genre. This is the untapped market.
Mm-hmm.
That's a callback, a beautiful callback. This is the untapped market of YouTube. We don't have enough post-stream, post-game shows. Just saying.
Wait, so is my interview the inaugural?
You're right now, as far as I know, because I don't believe I've tried this before, this particular gimmick before. This is the first time that I've done a specific post-game show on a live stream. And I was thinking about this one all day. And as soon as you had it fully announced, I was like, oh, I kind of want to do this. Listen, I had that John Madden Pat Summerall picture ready for hours, Bobbles. Hours. I was ready.
Well, I appreciate it. So,
It
and I hope
deserved it.
everybody enjoyed. And more than anything, I hope it answers at least some questions or helps folks some if they've been interested or curious or what have you. So that's more what it was about. I mean, I love graded cards, and I've said I buy all slabs, right? So even if I don't have any intent to use tag, if I seen one in the market and it was a card I may want,
Mhm.
I would be at least I would want to know about the company. So that's why I've had questions. And plus, to share information and all that stuff with people. I mean, isn't that what we're supposed to use YouTube for? Is to try to help folks out.
I
So
agree. I agree.
I hope the questions helped. I hope the answers that were given helped. And so
I
Yeah, I
agree with
think
that.
and I know that we're friends and everything, and I don't want to blow smoke up your skirt, but I think you really did a great job. You didn't just ask fluff questions; you asked direct questions. You were forceful but very respectful, as you always are. And I think you got a lot of information and made him have to answer these questions.
Mhm.
You lit a little bit of a fire, but again, always remain respectful, and he is willing to come back and visit again. And I think that shows that that you did a good job, where he didn't just go, all right, this is a hit piece, I'm out of here, and just hang up. So yeah, I think you did a great job.
he actually stayed twice as long as he told me he could.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
and that obviously says a lot about the job that you did. Uh,
It says
you
a
know,
lot about him too, because he could have just said, "Screw this guy" and leave, but he
yeah,
didn't. He stayed and he answered, and I was trying to answer fair questions, but also questions that were legitimate questions, like for everybody.
Right.
So
Now,
That's right.
I assume that the missus wrote all of your questions for you, correct?
honestly, like I said, I told you guys before we came live here. He popped in 2 minutes before I went live. And he's like, "Sorry, but how long were you planning?" I was like, "Well, I didn't have really any specific time." And he's like, "Okay, I only got about 30 minutes. I have a dinner plan I have to go attend
Mhm.
and everything." And I'm like, "Okay, we'll get into a few things and go with it." And I wasn't sure if he could extend or not. He wound up doing it. I actually had because I think this is the first time I've ever like interviewed anybody.
Right.
So I did have some stuff wrote down and everything, and I had a notes. I have an IMAX of my notes. I had a bunch of questions there. I just kind of went with the important ones, I guess, things that I was really curious about since I thought it was a time crunch. So um, again, I hope it answered other people's questions as well. So
I agree. Let me read a couple of these here and I'll get caught up. Baker Scott says, can go with 3 a.m. Carlos. Eric knows the 3 a.m. Carlos is always lurking at all times. Now the best part is 3 a.m. Carlos will be my scapegoat. He's my fall guy. If I really feel like being ornery,
No,
he's my fall guy.
no, we're not gonna. He can come out Friday. He's not gonna show up.
He's always right there. Bubbles, he's always right there. Right there. At
No,
all times of the day or night. Uh,
we'll see him Friday, but he's
oh,
not
you
coming
will.
out tonight.
that's mine, Bob.
Oh, you will. Yep. Scott, are you? There you go. So let me quickly scan through here. Staying awake to watch this, man. I'm down for the post game show. Appreciate you, Mrs. Bobbles, as always. Appreciate you. Yeah, 4 likes. Oh, we need more likes. I think that's true. We need more likes so I can charge Eric. It's very important. Congratulations, Bobbles, to be the first. Absolutely. Deservedly so. Deservedly so. Certainly worthy. Is there a link to the interview? I will include a link to it. So for folks to check it out on replay, I'll include a link to it in the description for you. I will try to see if I can put it in the chat. If I can and I can pin it for you, I will. I will try and see what I can do. Sometimes YouTube's weird about links, but I'll try and see if I can pull it off.
Yeah, right. Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Have
I
you
don't.
actually tried to put a link in the chat?
No, I'm talking about Mrs. Bobbles, my BFF. I don't believe you.
Uh-huh. Yep. What's up, everyone? Hope you're having a great night. 4-leaf cards. Good evening. This must be about the director guy. Just because something is shot well makes someone laugh doesn't look good. No, this one is about the tag thing. But the director guy, I'll talk more about that on Friday. I've had some fun with it already. Like it's got I got my notifications blown up. Like if you guys go check those videos, the original review and my rebuttal, like literally the director guy has replied to almost every subsection of the commentary. After a while, I just kind of sat back. I'm not even going to reply to this. I'm just sitting there watching it. I'm kind of sitting back and basking in it. I'm like, it's a good thing it's a good thing you're a busy man. You got other things to do. You got time to respond to people in the comments. I'm like, how much time do you have? I'm working. I'm not responding to this. You're on your own. So Mark Lattimore, good evening. Just bought a LeBron rookie tag 6. Thought process. 1, please be real. 2, cross SGC ASAP so that it's fake. Get a eBay refund. 60-40 proposition. You're taking the chance, man. You're taking the chance. Fair enough. I hear someone's Discord popping off. Yeah, Discord's going crazy. We are Bobbles and I are in the same Discord. There's a lot. I've got it in here, so you can't hear it, but it's definitely been going off.
It was mine.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. All good. Just checking it out here. Got a couple of pings. I'll scan it in a second. Yeah. Don't feed Carlos after midnight. I always eat after midnight. The best part is that I always get a snack after we finish the show. I'll go get my snack after we're done talking. But the thing is, it's not about the snacking or not snacking. It's about I was actually shutting it down for the night when I saw that nonsense, and I was like, all right, I'm making a video, and now I'm having to step on my own other video. By the way, the other video with the Favre showcase, I'm actually very proud of that video. I actually think it's a very good video, but I had to step on it because I had to crush this fool. I mean, respectfully rebut. I meant respectfully rebut. Moving on. For every like, Eric will eat a bug of his choice. He'd do that anyway, but yes. Come on, we all know Mrs. Bobbles is the brains of the operation. There you go. Mrs. Bobbles says true. The director has very thin skin. Yes, very much so. Carlos has gotten this man to put more effort in his comment section than he did that joke of a film. Yes, that's my favorite part. Literally, he's sitting there typing away. You know, his keyboard must be breaking under the strain of all the typing and sitting there like, don't you have a film to promote? You've already got a cream puff interview set for Wednesday, allegedly. One of the people in the film might be interviewing you. But yeah, focus on that. Hard hitting. Do that. Why is my BFF not in the Discord? Oh my God. It would just be endless pictures of chocolate sticks. It's highly inappropriate. That's not safe for work. Some of us are in that Discord during work, Mrs. Bobbles.
I will be completely honest. I belong to a Discord for cycling. I cannot figure the damn thing out. And after a short period of time of going, what is this mess and nonsense? I have not gone back.
Eric, don't feel bad because I'm only in the one Discord because I don't even know how to find Discords, and I'm only in that one because I was invited. So don't feel bad.
It reminds me of like the early internet. It is ridiculous. I'm just like, this is just a spider web of madness, and I stopped participating in it.
Nice. I like it. All right, there we go. I caught up so that I wouldn't hear the notifications. But yeah, it's one of those things like Discord is fun for what it is. I will say their GIF and meme collection is strong. I got a lot of value out of it. I do enjoy my memes. But yeah, it's kind of weird. It's like, okay, whatever. Okay, one other thing I wanted to touch on specifically. I'll get into that one here. Let me read this one here. Doesn't this show how poorly the movie was doing? If a small YouTube channel saying it stinks garners that much attention? Yes. You're potentially such a legend that make him lose tens of dollars. True. It's pretty bad. Eric joining Discord would make more fun from 1 day to 2-3 hours to 24/7, 365. Yes. Yes. Yes, it would just be an endless string of ridicule. I get like pings day and night. It's just like, I'm turning this shit off. It would just be like one shot after another. Unbelievable. Like he gets it bad on Fridays. Imagine just 24/7, a bunch of people could do it. Dang. So I want to touch on a couple of ones here. There were a few others. He did kind of now again, we'll give Steve his credit. He did hang in there and take some more serious questioning, which is good. But there were times he kind of betrayed a struggle. Let's put it that way. My personal favorite moment, and I'll set the groundwork, but I kind of want to know what you were thinking during this one. You brought in the Gronk card, and I thought that was fantastic. We know this infamous Gronk card is an SGC. I think it's an SGC 5, and we know who. Tag 5, and we know who owns this card. And we know who owns this card. They have physical possession of it, but you're able to pull up the dig report. So again, I'll lay the groundwork just so we're all being fair here. The idea of this dig report is supposed to be, again, hashtag transparency, right? The idea here is that This part of this technology is that you're getting all this tech to be able to grade this card accurately, do all this, detect all these flaws on the card and all that. The dig report is supposed to tell you with the information provided, how the centering is, how the edges, how the corners are, and everything are. My contention this whole time has been you do not have context. And also the imaging on it is terrible because sometimes you'll be like, there's a scratch here, and you'll zoom in and like, I can't see what you're talking about. Like, so then what good does this do me? Now, on the stream, and this is, don't take my word for it, watch the stream, you'll see when this is brought up, we have the founder, we have one of the gentlemen there, and at least one more person. 3 distinct people. It suddenly became a joke. How many tag employees does it take to read a dig report? At least 3. Probably more than 3. We might have needed a 4th. Because between all of them, they could not discern, even though we had a link to the specific flaw, we could see what the flaw was, we could zoom in on the flaw, and what was the conclusion? We'd have to see it in hand. If they want to send it back in, we could take a closer look at it. Ladies and gentlemen, if the point of the dig report, and this is not being mean, I'm pointing out the statement. If the point of the dig report is to help us determine why the card got the grade it did, we just demonstrated it failed. Because we had 3 tag employees, who should be better versed in how to use this dig report than anybody else on the planet, could not explain to us with satisfaction a specific flaw that we were able to point to specifically on the dig report. If the resolution was too low, you could pull it up yourself. You could ask the number and pull it up yourself. They either didn't think to do that or they weren't able to make that work. The point is, that is a damning indictment on this dig report. Forget about the rest of it. I'm like, so then what is the dig report for if I need to look at it in person anyway? Go ahead, Eric.
So playing, devil's advocate or whatever you want to call it, I think, specifically since Steve's told, Baubles, I don't need the questions coming beforehand, just fire them at me. You throw this at him, which was completely fair. It's hard sometimes when you're doing something live, not just, in person also, and someone just throws something at you and you have to try to figure it out immediately. I think what he should have said was, send me that information over and I'll have an answer for you within 24 hours. Instead of like at that very second trying to come up with an answer, get on this, get into their computers, look at a picture, analyze something. They should have said, well, listen, send that information over. We're going to take a quick look. We'll take a quick look at it, and we'll get an answer to you within 24 hours that you could repost on your show. Mm-hmm. So I think, like, here's a surprise issue. Give me an answer right now.
Mm-hmm. Now, I have a counter to that.
Okay.
I have a specific counter to that.
All right.
The point of the dig report was supposed to be the use case of a person making use out of it. What is the use case for a person using this? I'm at a show, I'm looking at a card, and I'd like to get I'm looking at the card, but I'd like to look at the evaluation. I have the benefit of being able to pull up the thing in a scan here, pulling up the dig report and being able to evaluate it. I'm physically at the show. You're telling me that I, the layman, cannot use this dig report to help me ascertain why the card got the grade it did when 3 tag employees can't do it. I agree with you, they could have more time, but the point of the dig report was I should not need more time. And if the answer is that it is a little too complicated and you'd need more time to evaluate it, then that means the dig report needs more refinement.
And I'm not saying it doesn't. I think you make a really good analogy that really can't be argued with, because that is the whole point of it.
Yes.
I'm at the show. You're trying to sell me this thing. I'm able to pull this up and get some further information on it. I just think there's a happy medium there. I think it's definitely it's tough when you're trying to answer rapid fire questions that you don't know when it's coming, and
2 points with this.
Go ahead.
For both sides of this. So I would have been perfectly accepting if Steve would have said, hey, I can't tell, or the other guys looking at the screen, said, hey, I can't really tell. They could have easily, as Carlos mentioned, there was other guys there. They could have pulled it up on their monitors or
Yeah.
whatever, took a closer look at it, what have you, just like you said, hey, give me the information and I'll give you an answer. They could have looked at it on the side because I asked that somewhat early into the stream. The other side to it is, though, not only does the person that owns the card currently, but the original submitter. So both people that have had this card in hand
Mhm.
have said that they cannot identify a wrinkle or crease in hand by the naked eye, by under magnification, anything, let alone the side the dig report.
Mhm.
It's possible that the report identified it incorrectly. Maybe it was supposed to be a dimple. Maybe it was supposed to be something else, and it's not a wrinkle or crease. Mistakes happen. I would give that the benefit of the doubt. That's why I brought that into question, though, because this process, the AI grading and this report and everything else is supposed to lay all this out for us, but it brought in more questions, and that was a perfect example of it because even they couldn't give us an answer. So
Yeah.
to be fair on both sides of it, I guess if the current owner wants it to be reevaluated, that they know that the opportunity is there now, but that there was a concern there because that report is very in depth, and when you have that much data and you still don't know why the card is a 5, that's a concern.
So I agree with you 100%. So what I said a few minutes ago, I stand by because that was me playing devil's advocate. So this is kind of my full true opinion on it is you they do need to make sure that this works, like Carlos was saying in the
Mhm.
at a show. um Kind of lost my train of thought for a second. Sorry about that.
Okay, so let me fill in a couple of things while you're thinking your train of thought.
Yeah.
The key thing is that we have to make sure the use case matches what you're saying it's supposed to do. One of the challenges I found in the course of that conversation, again, if I'm being very charitable and as down the middle as I can be, is that part of the issue with having so many patents is that Steve is not able to talk about a lot of the components of it. The problem is some of that secret sauce is what the people need in order to do pre-grading. It's great that they've now got on this site. It's new. It wasn't there before. I don't know when it got there, but it's definitely new. And I'll show it on the screen here while we're talking. So they got what they call the grading, you know, rubric, because Lord knows we can't just call it a grading standard like normal people. So basically, you've got all the different grades, and you've got some elements of it that you can use to help you try to kind of pre-grade to a certain degree and determine it. But it going back to that dig report. This is infinitely more helpful than the dig report, ironically. But the dig report is supposed to be one of these key features that this technology is supposed to be giving us. And we've determined over time that the dig report, it needs more refinement, or it needs something else, because without the context, we can't put the pieces together. Whereas opposed to here, I see, okay, so in order to get a 10, a gem mint 10 between 925 and 974, I don't know where I'm going to fall under, but somewhere in this range, centering. Tolerance of 55-45 on the front, 70-30 on the back. Okay, that's pretty close to PSA standard. It's slightly better than PSA standard, but it's right in that range.
Which
But the
I don't
thing
think
is,
anybody even agrees with, because how could something be gem mint if it's not 100% perfect? But
right.
that's a side.
I get you. But the bottom line is at least there is a standard here that you can borrow to kind of get yourself calibrated. So you say corners, okay, a little information about corners. Surface. Now here, surface. An extremely attractive surface. That's subjective, but okay. A slight print imperfection may occur under high-res imagery. How high-res is high-res? That's a little bit vague, but okay. A very minor defect, such as a small pit, light scratch does not penetrate the gloss, or a light print or refractor line may be present. Scoring is impacted by region. Back may have multiple print lines as well as a larger, deeper pit. Okay. Fair enough. Edges. An edge may display minor fill or fray. Very minor edge surfaces may be visible under high resolution imagery. Again, I don't know what high resolution is. So if I'm trying to pre-grade and figure out if this is a 10, it is better. To be clear, it's better. I'm still not quite all the way there, Eric.
So I definitely remembered what I was trying to say, and it
Go
goes
ahead.
back to what we've discussed on Fridays about the KISS method and keep it simple, stupid. If the owner of this cannot find anything
Mhm.
by their eye, they have a a common household magnifying item, glass or what scope or whatever you have, and that can't see it.
Mhm.
Maybe Tag has gone too far in their technology. If you have a super magnification that you could go from the card, turn it like this, and look at the moon and see, the inside of a crater, um, maybe you've gone overboard.
So
And
you're
maybe
saying we should recalibrate it and make it easier and
I,
not tell anyone.
well, I don't know about
Hashtag
that,
no transparency.
but I think within the first year, a company has a right to make lots of changes as long as they're telling people that and they're willing to adjust things that they've already done for free. So I already said that. So I think you got to keep it simple. Stupid is what works. It's exact reason why SGC went from 100 to a 10 because nobody understood what the hell a 98 was. Now we got to figure out what 1,000 is. And if they're using a super, 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 super magnifying glass that Joe Average has no accessibility to, and you can't see these things with your eye, all you're going to do is tick us off. You're going to make us upset when you're saying, wait a minute, you're saying that there's an issue here. I'm like this. I can't see it. I got the magnifying glass. I still can't see it. What do you this isn't what I want to pay for.
Mm-hmm.
I asked about magnification because that was a question that
Yeah.
someone specifically
But he
asked
couldn't
me
share
to
it.
ask,
But he couldn't share it.
and he told me that he couldn't tell me what magnification they used.
Yeah.
I know from my knowledge, all the other companies use 10x, which is more than fair.
Mhm.
But he couldn't give me any details on magnification. So
Yeah, and and again, I don't know. They're not talking about it's an industry secret. Okay, fine. But if you can go like this to this and see inside the craters of the moon, you've overdone it. You've gone you've gone well past the goalposts. Keep it simple, stupid. All right. Rule number one, and because I'm Carlos, rule book is, people are stupid. Why are you trying to confuse us? We're stupid. Collectors are stupid. People are stupid.
and you're opening the box for more questions.
Yeah.
You are. You are. Look,
You
I
know,
tried to be practical in my original critique of it. My original critique of it is I tried to be practical. That's why I talked about the dig report and that card show scenario. I said, if you need more time to evaluate it, then the dig report is not useful to me at the card show, at which point I am now relying on the label that I'm staring at in the card show, and I'm hoping I can see the flaws in the card, which means that you're no better, really, than any other third-party grader. You are offering then, because as soon as I remove the dig report, all I'm sitting there is with a transparent slab. You either like it or you don't. You see a grade, but you actually still don't know why you got the grade you did. I just negated this whole idea. And we also established that really transparency is not transparent because there's a secret sauce. There's a 1,000-point grade, but then there's a bunch of data that goes into that dig report, but we don't have context. We can't connect the dots to determine which one of these flaws dragged it down. If it got 9 instead of a 10, we don't know which one of these flaws dragged it down enough. And even in that discussion, when Steve explained it, if you run the same card through and don't touch it, there'll be a 3 to 4 point discrepancy. The machine itself cannot replicate the exact number. 3 to 4 points is not a big deal in a 1,000-point scale. But the
I thought
point
he said
is,
it was 8.
Was that?
I thought he said it was like 4 to 8 points. I could be
4
wrong.
to 8 is what they will allow if there's a check or something before they'll reevaluate it. But he said if you put the card through the machine, it'll get a number, and you don't touch it. Literally, you just put it back through the machine. There could be a 3 or 4 point discrepancy.
But at the same token, if it's a low 10 and it's all 4
that could be
points,
enough.
you could get bumped down to a 9.
Yeah.
I mean, so 3 to 4 points isn't a lot, but it could actually change a full numerical grade.
Yeah. The point is that even the tech, as much money as they've spent, as much time as they've spent, even there is a tolerance built into it. The tolerance built into it that they expect. So I assume that's a hardware tolerance as opposed to software tolerance. They go, there's a possibility of a 3 or 4 point swing just running it through the machine again. Even the machine cannot replicate the grade exactly. But pretty precise, but not exactly. Not perfect precision. Pretty good precision, but not perfect. Which is fine. But you need to understand that. I think people think AI, oh, perfect precision. Nope. You
Well,
literally got it flat out. It is not perfect.
I wish people would stop calling it that. The computer is not thinking for itself. It
It's
isn't
not.
a life form. There is no such thing as AI. And if it does exist, it is being used at the highest levels of government, and it's in a secret room somewhere in, Mount Rushmore. We're never going to see it or hear about it. So there is no AI. It doesn't exist.
I, for one, welcome our robot overlords.
Uh, yeah, you're just saying that now, so you're on record. So when they
Absolutely.
come, they'll just
No, they basically just destroy you. It's pretty
yeah,
good. It's a pretty
exactly.
good deal. It's a pretty sweet. It's pretty sweet.
I'm also, I'll tell you another thing, and you didn't mention it before we went on. I don't know if it was
Sure.
on your list or not,
Yeah, yeah.
but there was something else that he said, and I know the chat kind of atoned to it. When I ask about the trimmed cards,
Yes.
and he's like, "Well, we
Allegedly,
won't
trim
do
cards aren't a
trimmed
thing.
cards,"
Go
but
ahead.
then he said, "We can't disclose how we would know they're trimmed,"
Yeah.
and I'm like, "But."
You can't disclose measurements. Come on.
We know that trimmed cards, like the people out there doing this, we know that they do it, can flatten them. I mean, look at the Contenders rookie tickets. Those were a 2021, 2020, whatever. Those were actually the right size. And we also know that the manufacturers aren't cutting cards precisely in the same size each
Yeah.
time.
Most products have a certain tolerance that you have to assume. You have to
Right.
assume a certain
Panini's
tolerance that's
terrible with
considered
it.
normal. Yeah.
So I'm thinking, like, that was a very vague question on how they're saying that they're not going to grade cards. Like, if it's all about sizing tolerances, like, what are you actually detecting that's going to tell you that a card is trimmed? I mean, that was a interesting one.
Yeah. Well, I think that's going to be an even bigger challenge if they ever do venture into the vintage realm, because any high-end vintage card of a certain vintage that is super high-end should be looked at with like, really, that's an 8 or a 9 from 1912 or 1911 or 1909? Really? Somehow you survived this entire time. Interesting. Are you sure about that? Is that your final answer? So Dakota here is saying machine learning is a better term, which it is. That's accurate. Shoving puzzles efficiently, but yes, human programmed to look for a specific answer. Yes, absolutely. But that's kind of the point here. And Dave is talking about the soak, press, trim, and you're within size tolerance. Yeah, that's a very standard practice in kind of the vintage realm that a lot of stuff has been messed with that way. So you have to look at it. Yeah. So you can measure the thickness of the card. There are certain telltale signs that you can try to pick up. Again, it's not perfect, but you can. There are certain things that help you. There are certain things that you can detect if you have the expertise in that specific issue. There are certain things that you expect to see, and if you see something that falls outside of it, you'll know. And there's certain things the machine simply can't pick up. Like we don't have the approach. It's not even just scanning technology. It's just you can somebody who's experienced can grab a vintage card and by feel you know it's right or wrong. You'll know if the stock is the correct, and you'll know. Well, the machine can't do this. Like that ain't gonna work. It can scan it. It can run different imagery on it and see like, okay, does this seem right to you? But that's as far as it goes. So there are limitations, and we'll have to see. I did think that it was interesting. Like from a marketing perspective, we'll see if that is the same tone going forward. I thought it was interesting when you were actually, and I'll just bring this up, and we'll start winding her down on this one. One of the key pieces was when you talked about the difference in like a scratch or a pit on the person's face versus on another part of the surface. Now, I think what he was trying to get at and struggling to articulate, I'm going to give him a little bit of credit for it. I think he was struggling to articulate eye appeal. Because obviously, if
Right.
you got a scratch over the front of a player's face, like a Mickey Mantle card, but you got a scratch right here, as opposed to just to the left or right of his body, it can be the exact same scratch. The technical grade would be the same. But from an eye appeal aesthetic perspective, you would prefer one card over the other. And the one card would get a premium over the other if put into an open market. But the technical grade should be pretty much the same. So I actually disagree with this premise that eye appeal be built into an algorithm. I actually think that doesn't make any sense because technically the grade is the same. It's a scratch of this depth and this size on the surface of the card. It should deduct X. Being on the person's face is actually wrong. I also thought it was a bad call to be like, well, if you don't like that, use somebody else. It's like, all right, I will. I'm convinced. You're right. You're right, Steve.
That
Yeah,
was
I
one
mean-
of the things I was texting with Brad as we were watching this together. Is that you know, I wrote this down as a note. His tone was defiant at times, such as if you don't like what we're doing, go somewhere else. Well,
And I will.
Again, as a businessman, shouldn't you be trying to get people that are PSA customers and SGC customers and that other company customers? Aren't you trying to get them to come to you? You're a new business. You have no customers, and
He has 35 to 40,000 cards in boxes that he refuses to grade. He's got lots of customers.
You're already saying go somewhere else. Your job is to try to get people to come to you, not already start saying go somewhere else. I just thought that
he
was
said he
defiant.
didn't want them.
Yeah.
I just thought that was very defiant. And obviously this guy, is a very successful business person. You have to be ruthless. You have to be defiant. You got to, build walls and put your foot down. But if you're trying to sell something, that might not be the best way to do it. I also thought it was a little. I hope it's not true. I hope it was just more defiance.
Mm-hmm.
But when he said, "I don't spend time keeping an eye on my competition,"
Ooh, I like that. I'm glad you brought this one up. Let me read a couple of these, but I love that comment. You're right.
I was like, "Are you kidding me?"
Yep. Hang on. So Colorado Sports Dude jumped in here for the long day. So Tag doesn't have a 9.5. They do not. That is not part of their scale. I'll be running over the top bar. There you go. Good evening, Alf. Let's see here. Dave says, similar to the solvents that Dick Toll used to remove stains, you could just not tell with the naked eye. If they do it really well, that's a different thing entirely. Good evening, Tom. Absolutely. So you almost had a hat trick. Interesting. Nice Bruins win tonight. So Alf says, there you go. There's one for you, Eric. So you believe in a sliding scale for certain sets because of the manufacturing process. I think you have to take into account some quirks in manufacturing for certain sets. That sometimes that's legitimate. Sometimes there's a little bit of an issue. Again, I'm going to make a distinction, and this is something maybe the manufacturers need to make clearer. To me, there's a difference between a technical grade and eye appeal. A technical grade is a technical grade. It is us adding up the flaws to arrive at whatever we deem the grade to be. That is regardless. That's the example of the scratch. If it's a scratch, it's on the surface, it's a scratch. It should get the same technical grade whether it's over the person's face or whether to the right or the left of their body. It doesn't make a difference from a technical grade perspective. But from an aesthetic perspective, you ask the collector which one they would prefer, they're going to pick the one where it's not on the guy's face, right? And that's fine. And maybe they'll pay a premium for the other one. But that's not that shouldn't affect the technical grade. To me, the technical grade on both cards should be the same if it's a similar flaw, similar size, similar everything else. That's the fairest way to do it.
To go back to the trim thing real quick, and this is not alterations, but since Dakota's in here, I don't know if he's ever came across any.
Yep.
But outside of just alterations, I am curious of what is actually authenticating the cards, because he mentioned on the TCG stuff, and there's things out in the TCG world called proxies, and believe me, from Asia, there's a lot of fake Pokemon and Magic and all that stuff that gets imported and all that. And if you don't know what you're looking for, they look pretty good. And I don't know how the computer and the program is going to be identifying these, if it's things like feel of the card, as you mentioned, or what a lot of the Pokemon people do if they suspect they have a fake, they'll take a cheaper copy of the pack or out of the pack, and they'll rip it in half because there's actually it should be black, because of the print process on a original Pokemon card. So who's going to be identifying like all of these, like for the authenticity purposes? If they got a process down for alterations, great, but I wonder who's actually authenticating.
Well, that's been one of the questions that I've had, because they, by their own acknowledgement, they've got very limited expertise. They've got the one guy who worked at PSA for 8 years or so, ish. You know, don't quote me on the exact number, but it's something in that level. Where does his expertise lie? What is his area, particularly, that he's best versed in? Nobody is versed in everything. There are guys that have a little more vintage expertise. There are some guys that have a little bit, maybe Pokemon, modern, a variety of different categories. What is your area? Because you're one of the lead consultants helping them to design this. And I'll use a simple example. Again, they're not doing vintage, so I understand this is not an issue for them today. Let's say they finally get into vintage. They decide to start doing, okay, T206s. How will they know, without necessarily having the expertise, that this card cannot possibly exist with this back? What if it's a card, a T206 has been rebacked? That is a normal thing, a normal alteration. You take a real back and a real front, you smush them together, but the two never existed at the same time. That front should not have that back, but the front and the back of the card are physically real. You just you Frankensteined it together. That's a very common alteration. You go take a look, you see a Honus Wagner with an old mill back, you're going to be like, no, we got a serious problem. That does not exist. That has never been a thing. You know, a Ty Cobb back on like a regular T206 Comet, that is not a thing. That is not a possible thing. That's what I mean. But you got to know what you're looking for. You give that to somebody, literally they'll just look at it and go, yeah, fake. That's, like, I don't even need to go any further. I don't need to do any additional examination. That back does not exist with that front. Never happened. That's a fake. We don't need to go any further. But if you scan it through the machine and the machine sees and it's like, yep, surface, blah, 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 it's a 1. Yeah, but it's fake. It's technically a 1, but it's a fake. You know, whatever. We'll have to see. But these things would be ones that would concern me. The authentication piece is one that would concern me. Legal proxies determined in play, abominations, there you go. The algorithm should know what the print actually looks like in every card under a microscope. That should do it for older cards anyway. But without that, I don't know how you do it. Yeah. It's going to be, like I said, it's not exactly tricky. It's kind of tricky. It's kind of see. We'll have to see. Do you have a Tesla and use Twitter? Dare we live the dream? Chinese industrial printers? Facts. Cool. Okay, anything else? So we've touched on the main ones. Oh, actually, sorry. Before I finish, I did want to touch on the one that you were saying, Eric. Refresh my memory before we got kind of sidetracked.
Don't spend time keeping my eye on the competition.
Yes.
And it's like, he said that, and the first thing I said to myself is, have you never run a business before? Trust me, Pepsi knows everything Coke is doing. Adidas knows everything that Nike is doing. How in the world can you say, I want to get into this industry, but I don't care what PSA, SGC, and that other company is doing? I'm not paying any attention to it.
This one I would send cards to.
Just blows my mind.
This is a startup I can get behind. I feel it's legit.
I'm in. Where do I sign?
I can work with that one. Yeah, like that's one we can get behind. Sears and Amazon, don't be Sears. Facts. No, but I agree with you. Like, look, just from to your point from earlier, he was being very defiant sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't make sense to be defiant. Sometimes it makes sense to be conciliatory and just kind of like roll with it, and like the stuff that's being asked is not unreasonable. The stuff that's being asked is not ridiculous. Right. And I'm gonna default to my original point, and we'll kind of conclude on this. And we did this, Bobbles, when we originally were talking about this the very first time where I did it, where I gave you kind of sight unseen. I started feeding you information and you got increasingly perplexed as we went along. That is not the reaction you should have as an experienced hobbyist when I'm presenting this to you. It's kind of weird. It's kind of the way you got to kind of it messes things up. But I think the most important piece to this is that, and this is the way it's been phrased multiple times by the tag folks, is that they say, like, you know, thank you for giving us a chance to earn your business. That's the thing, though. In order to earn my business, you have to prove to me that you can do some of the things you claim to do. You cannot skirt around some of these questions that I would have. I have no reason to use you. There are people who I think are invested in the idea of AI grading. It's the same way they were invested in the idea of HGA when they claimed to have AI grading, and before they could prove a single bit of it. This one here has a lot of things going for it that seem to show off, but I still haven't seen AI grading. I've seen a machine. I've seen a facility. I've seen a dig report without contextual components of it. There's still a lot of holes in this picture, in this image that you're presenting to me. It's a better looking example. This is a better mousetrap from the perspective of what you're showing. I'm still not convinced it does what it claims it can do. But I'm also not going to give you money for that privilege. And if I see a tag card, I'm not paying a premium for it. I'm paying a massive discount because I have no interest whatsoever in being the guinea pig. You're going to have to prove it over time by being out in the marketplace, letting transactions happen, and then we'll let the marketplace figure out if they're cool with what you're doing.
I agree with you 100% on everything you just said. And I am someone that hopes this company can do everything it's saying. I hope it ends up being successful. I hope it takes over everything. I hope it does everything it says it wants to do. You know, I'm curious what the hell a slab ATM is, but have one of those on every street corner. Great, because I've said it 100 times. I've never put a card in for grading. I've never paid for one to be graded because I don't believe that a person's opinion, depending on day to day goings on in their lives, um, is what I should be sending my cards in to have done. I have purchased plenty of graded cards. I go to a show, I hold it, I look at it, I look at the grade, I look at the price, and I make the decision if I want to purchase it or not. But I've never sent a card in my life, and I don't know if I ever will. I like the idea of it being a computer and that everything is the same and it's just going to go through it's doesn't matter what card it is or who sent it in. It's just going to go bing, 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 bing. That's it. I like the idea of that.
The idea is a critical piece to your statement.
That's the word I'm using.
Yeah.
I like the idea of that. I hope that is something that can be achieved at some point by somebody. Having Joe Average sitting there and doing hundreds of cards a day and their eyes burning out of their head and the monotony of being a card. Can you even imagine what it is the monotonous job of being a card grader is? There is not enough money in the world to give me to I would do that job. I would blow my brains out within a week. So having a computer do it and having it be the same, boom, ba boom, ba boom, ba boom, ba boom. It's no longer an opinion. It's no longer of I got in a fight with my spouse this morning or I had a really good morning with my spouse and I'm going to give an 8 or a 9. Well, I'm in the mood for 9s today.
And they had chocolate sticks and they were fresh.
And then see if you had chocolate sticks and I had
now it's all 10s, 10 pluses,
11s, Spinal Tap, baby.
So I was able to put the link in, by the way, guys. For those of you who are still here, I put a link and I actually tagged it at the top of the chat. I was able to pin it. It is a link to the original interview on the Baubles and Baller Cards channel. It's also in the chat if you see it. That should help direct you to the channel. Again, for the replay, I'll put the link in the description for you if you check it out later. So you can go. I do recommend it because it'll give context to everything we're talking about because we're basing this piece of the conversation. I've had plenty of discussions on tag, but this one we're basing on the specific interview. We're basing on the specific questions and the specific answers that Steve Cass gave pertaining to it. So the information he provided us. So we're going off of that because that's the latest and greatest straight from the founder himself.
To touch on Eric's point about his comment that he doesn't keep an eye on his competitors, just something like, from my perspective, and really to be honest, why I did all this is Steve watched my video, commented. He is the one that said something about coming on and answering questions because he's seen I had questions, and I do highly respect him for that. I give him a lot of credit for doing that. I am interested in grading. I am interested in sports cards, graded sports cards. I don't, even though I use SGC, I'm a bulk submitter of SGC, I buy other companies' slabs. So I wouldn't just go buy, and I'm going to use his name again, but, Joe Schmo company's slab if I don't know anything at all about the company, right? So that's kind of, the technology is interesting, but there's questions, especially when they've said it's been like this 10-year project. They've rolled this out, months ago and doesn't look like they're doing much. And then there's questions with, you see a 5 and you can't determine why it's a 5. So I had lots of questions involved in it.
Yeah.
But to the point of you don't pay attention to your competitors or whatever, gem rate exists because we as collectors, we as people in this hobby are interested in numbers, interested in seeing what the companies are doing, interested in seeing what the strength of, these businesses are in the hobby and everything, right? The reason that the data tools are so successful is so people can look at the comps and the different companies and compare. And that, the YouTube era, kind of some of the channels that blew up were sitting there doing market content and showing some graphs and everything.
Mhm.
I don't know how, if you are the founder, that you're not keeping an eye on your competition. You want, like, and for him to say, well, we don't want any of the other people's cards, any whose cards are you getting then? Because I mean, yeah, sure, there might be a random person out there that's like, nope, I don't like them. Oh, but you're cool, I'm gonna try you out. But that's gonna be very few. And you've invested, what was it, $10 million+ into a business. That takes a lot to make up. So
And actually, you reminded me of one thing, and I kind of want to leave it on this thought, and then I'll leave you to the last word. By the way, Chad, if there's anything else that you want to throw in last word wise, throw it in now because I'll read the last couple. But I also, you reminded me of something. One of the comments in it was the idea that when they decide to basically flip the switch and turn on, the full capabilities of the machines, unlimited capacity, but they also said that they would be able to basically drop the price to something that no one else could compete with. And I'm like,
Yep.
so your plan is a race to the bottom when you're already 10 million deep?
Right. And they're one of the highest now.
You,
So
you
that would
know that
be
you
a
know
hell
that
of a drop.
Eric, help me on this with your business acumen and expertise. If they dropped to, like, say, $5 a card, could they get a lot of submissions? Yes. How many $5 submissions is it going to take for you to make $10 million back?
7.
Well,
Close.
you have to think about the staffing costs and everything else,
But
and all the
Bubbles,
little
that's my
submission
point.
kids.
Bubbles, my point literally is that if you dropped your price, yes, you could do that. And would that get you some more market? Yes, it would. But if I already have something in a PSA 10 and it's still selling for good money, I'm not cracking out and putting in a tag. I don't care if it's $1 a card. So you're not getting that card. So what the hell am I sending you? I'm sending you 1991 Donruss Commons. There's nothing left. What am I sending you that I would give a crap to even at the lowest price you could try at? I'm like, a race to the bottom when you're offering yourself. This is what the weird branding, mixed message that I get from Tag. In a lot of elements, they're kind of like portraying themselves almost to be like a premium option with all their fancy technology and a lot of these elements. But at the same time, they invoke the possibility of being the bargain basement grader. And I'm like, so you're gonna be the cheap grader then? Is that what you're going for?
See, I honestly thought that they were actually trying to be the and not to steal anything from SGC, but like the black tie, the formal, the true tuxedo, the high end. We're gonna send you this beautiful box to your house, and you're gonna put your cards in it and send it back to us, and we're gonna have butlers, take it from the front door to the building and to the back, English butlers, of course, and to the back room and to deliver it to the graders to put on the machine. And I'm like, all right, well, that's not going to be cheap.
Hold on.
Butlers want to get paid.
I have to interrupt 1 second and toss a little joke out there, because something that Carlos has always claimed that Peter is eventually going to offer is where you get instant grading and you don't even have to send the cards in.
Precognitive grading.
Well, he actually said in the interview, Steve did, that they're going to offer a service where you don't even have to send them the cards. I don't know how that's going to work, but...
I must have missed that one. Did he literally say that?
Yes, he said we would send you the tech or something like that, and you just send us.
You're gonna encapsulate it yourself. Yes, Eric's gonna encapsulate all his cards upside down.
That's what he said. He said it when he was talking about the ATMs and other stuff. Yes, go back and check that.
I
It was in that.
I completely missed that one. I
Yeah.
must have been looking at something else at that moment.
Get used
So
to it,
you always
folks.
joke about, because SGC's turning around. You're like, dang, if they get any quicker, Peter's just gonna already have it.
Well, I listen.
Ready
I
for you.
already made clear with SGC. I have terms. Bobbles, pass along as owner of SGC. Pass along the terms to SGC Pete. I will send cards in to SGC if I get 1 hour photo grading, and Peter must personally fly it in on the Learjet and hand deliver them to me in velvet bags. In velvet bags, and then I will consider paying your what is it, $18 per, like whatever. That's about worth $18 to me. Like the hobby documentary, Tag is about 2 years out of date, launched the company. Right now, it's probably not the space to enter it to. It's kind of late for that. Tuxedo grading, the speedo grading. There you go. Hey guys, have some catching up to do. Absolutely, I was a card dad, but thank you for joining in. Appreciate you. G-Stern grading. I'm sure someone thought of that one. Customer service should be psychic. I know. Can't wait for the ATM card grading, eating and destroying card. Yes, be amazing. Isn't there would be a store automated grading deal that happened based on everyone's grade or something? So that was the one where they did the what's it called? They had the machines with the scanner, and it was like
Card
the
score.
yeah, that's the one, and it was basically yeah,
I've seen one.
Yeah.
Not didn't use it, but I've seen one.
Yep. So that was the one. But yeah, it was kind of interesting. Oh, by the way, as a quick update, I just made an offer on a coaster. Go on.
You came.
Oh, they accepted my offer on the coaster. Amazing.
Carlos, it's not Friday. You came so close. Now stop it.
I'm just excited about buying a coaster. I needed a coaster.
Carlos.
Just to let you guys know, because I know there's a lot of
Not
hockey
Friday.
fans. The Seattle Kings game, there is 13 goals scored already, and the second period's not even over. The
Oh,
Kraken Kings, 13
Really?
goals scored.
Oh, okay. When you put it together like that, it sounded like an ECHL team or like some random team
Seattle
out
Kings,
west.
No,
Talking
Kraken
about.
Kings.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like the way you said it, I was like, that sounds like a team out west. I'm sure it's pretty
Were
sweet.
there no goalies tonight? No goalies showed up for the game.
I don't know. It's 7-6. My phone kept going off with the NHL alerts because I have the Kraken on here because that's the Mrs. chosen team now. So,
Yep.
but yeah, it's 7-6, and the second period's not even over.
Interesting. All right. Fair enough. Sounds good. So I think that's it for the comments. Thank you all, as always, for hanging out. We did this is the first ever at least on this channel, post live stream, post game show. We talked about it. I did include, like I said, I tagged it in the chat. If you want to check it out, I will include it, the link to it in the description after the fact. Once we go offline, I'll include a link to it in the description. Check out the original interview. If it'll give you more context for this. Obviously, you can listen to what we're saying. We describe and explain certain parts of it for you. But if you do listen to the interview with Steve Cass from Tag, you will understand exactly what we're referencing. You will hear it directly from the guy himself, and then you'll kind of get our take on kind of what he said to help kind of line that up and make a little bit more sense out of it. I'm curious now if these guys are just making up numbers. You got 12-6, you got 8-6, and 12-8. Like, what is the actual score?
I'm thinking 12-8 is probably a joke.
I guess so, maybe.
It's 8-6 Kraken.
It's 8-6, okay. Kraken playing Martin Jones. This might as well no goalie. Signed a Sharks fan. Ooh. Can we get some goalkeeping? Apparently not. Yep, Tuesday is close to Friday. What the heck? Oh, this is special. This is a special one. I was very excited about it. I even cracked out the John Madden and Pat Summerall picture. I was very enthused. Got to do it. All right. So, folks, on your way out, if you could, much appreciate your comments and everything tonight. If you could hit the like button, I'm charging Eric for it. Like always. I want you to think about that on your way out. Eric looks like a man because Eric needs to put some money aside, not only for this, but he's going to be buying himself, I think he's sending every card he has to Tag. All of them. Whatever price. And he will let them hang on to it for 5, 10, 50 years if that's what they want to do. Because apparently that's what we do. If you have real faith in this company, you send it to them and tell them not to grade it. You tell them to hold it forever.
You came so close. I was proud of you up until the last few minutes.
It happens. I did the best I could. Bubbles, I felt like I did pretty good on this. At the tail end, it's like, I'm sorry, I got excited. I bought a coaster on eBay and I got thrilled.
Stop it.
Thanks, BGS Eric.
An actual serious.
We had a serious conversation. The serious conversation is now over. Thanks, BGS Eric.
We'll just hold on till Friday.
There you go. Had a great night, my friends. Yep, see you. Eric needs to use his BCCCCG money. Mrs. Bobbles, thank you, Mrs. Bobbles. Appreciate that. Or the money he makes from liquidating his Vinnie Vincent Invasion collection. Love it. Nice job, Bob Jackson. Nice job. All right, guys. So appreciate you hanging out. Appreciate you joining in the commentary here. Some great comments and some great things. And Eric's really appreciating Bob Jackson, as he always does.
We're so close.
What does that have to do with me reading Bob Jackson's comment?
Just at the whole everything in general. We were doing really good, and then it turned into Friday nonsense.
Eric, this is where I should probably tell you. My rule number 5, Carlos lies. I had no intention whatsoever of ever getting to the end without taking a shot or 7. There was a 0% chance I was going to do that. What have you been watching this whole time?
Oh, God.
Anyway, thank you very much, folks. So this was the post-game show to the live stream. Eric is thrilled, and he's enjoying himself. He's off to send himself some upside down, get some see-through, and hang out forever. It'll be great. Back on the regular videos coming up on the channel for the rest of it, and the live stream on Friday where you'll get 3 a.m. Carlos. The whole time. Time.
That's Friday nonsense.
Plus, we got to talk about card documentaries. I suddenly feel inspired to talk about card documentaries on Friday. I don't know why, but I kind of feel compelled to do so. It's going to be fun. Anyway, thanks, everybody. Have yourself a good night, okay? Take it easy.
Good night, everybody.